Major funding for NOVA is provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding was provided by Allied Corporation, an advanced technology company proud to support outstanding science programming on public television.
Channel 25's acquisition of NOVA is made possible in part by a grant from the Reinberger Foundation.
The romance of the Irish and their horses is one of the oldest love stories on earth. This is Richard Kyle. Join me for a spectacular panorama of horses and horsemanship, racing and riding on Ballad of the Irish Horse, our next National Geographic special.
Tune in tomorrow night at 8.
The grasslands, a place to dance, to find a nutritious meal, or just to sunbathe. Journey with David Attenborough to see the remarkably varied animals that live in the seas of grass, next time on The Living Planet.
Saturday at 8.
WVIZ TV 25, Cleveland.
American Government Survey is made possible through funds made available by Cuyahoga Community College and Lorain County Community College. American Government Survey was made possible through funds made available by Cuyahoga Community College and Lorain County Community College. WVIZ TV 25, Cleveland. The new literacy is made possible through funds made available by Cuyahoga Community College and Lorain County Community College.
Funding for this program was provided by the Annenberg CPB project.
You know, at first glance, there doesn't appear to be anything unusual about this machine. It looks like any one of 100 other anonymous mechanical devices, except for one thing. It's a 16th century printing press, thought by many to be the most important invention of the last 2,000 years. Along with the printed word came an explosion of ideas, and suddenly people were flooded with information, not to mention business cards, wedding invitations, and junk mail. Today, the computer is being touted as a kind of electronic printing press that's redefining the way we look at information. We can project financial trends in a matter of seconds, share reports with colleagues across the country, and best of all, with a computer, you can leave your apron in the kitchen.
In the early 1960s, the commercial use of computers began to expand rapidly, and a new age was upon us. Computers at that time were large, complicated, and very expensive. So much so, in fact, that only large corporations, the government, and educational institutions could afford them. So while computers affected those who were able to make use of them, their overall impact was not noticed widely. Today, the picture is quite different. In the few years since the computer age began, there have been dramatic reductions in the size and cost of computer hardware, tremendous increases in speed and efficiency, and remarkable advances in software for user applications.
You're going to be paying cash today?
Computers are now appearing in small businesses as well as large ones. They're used in offices, stores, and manufacturing plants, and are having a profound effect on the organizations and the individuals who are part of them. The first and most obvious impact is the direct economic effect of computing.
Cost savings, of course, occur when you use computers in large volume data processing jobs, such as you find in insurance companies or in government agencies that produce large volumes of a similar kind of information processing tasks, such as processing tax forms or employment forms or insurance forms in the case of industry. And here, simply by using the computer to replace people, you achieve actual cost savings from reducing the need for people or from being able to provide more service, that is to serve more people with the same number of, to serve more clients with the same number of people within the organization.
Industries that are product-oriented find computers useful in areas such as quality control, inventory management, and asset utilization.
The evolution of computer-based control systems over the last 10 years has been really quite dramatic. The technology has been developed which allows businesses to interrogate a very large-scale database system in a very inexpensive way. So the amount of data that can be brought to the task of determining whether performance is in line with objectives has just grown immeasurably. At the same time, the development of very inexpensive, small-scale display devices has made it possible to put screens and interrogation devices on the desks of a manager or a group of managers and bring these reports in real time directly in front of them.
Hundreds of parameters are tracked simultaneously on the computer so that a manager like myself can study his quality trends in a matter of 30 minutes and look at hundreds of parameters, and problems will become immediately obvious by looking at the indices and trends. In terms of inventory, we build product. In terms of inventory control, we manufacture the high technology portion of the product here in Dallas. We might do the assembly of that product in Malaysia. That product might be shipped to England and then from there to an individual customer. We build literally hundreds of thousands of device types. So in order to be able to tell a customer when he asks you the question, when can I have my part, I've got to know where that part is, anywhere in this worldwide organization. So Texas Instruments is the largest user of satellite communications tied back through computers. And we use those principally to control our inventory.
When management decides to bring a computer system into an organization, it can expect negative as well as positive effects. First, there's a cash outlay, or at least a commitment of cash, to acquire the hardware and software needed to do the job. Additional funds are usually spent hiring new employees to program the system and to train other staff members in its use. Introducing change into an organization is in itself a challenge, and there are often other complicating factors to contend with.
It's a little bit like peeling the onion. You know, on the surface of the onion, you see a lot of problems which are not unique to computerized manufacturing planning control systems. They're unique to almost any technology. They're common to almost any technology. An example would be a lack of discipline in terms of just being able to overcome change and to get good, accurate data to feed the system. To get a plant foreman who for years has been operating in the mode of going out and looking in a barrel to see how much is there, listening to someone over the coffee hour to find out what the status is on the other side of the floor, to now change their mode of operation to start thinking about interjecting very precise pieces of data into a computerized system is not a major task. Beyond that, as you peel the onion, the next layer of problems you might encounter is, well, it's really a lack of management commitment. Because if management was really committed, they would somehow create an environment so that this person who's out on the floor having to do all these things would do them. Either the appropriate kind of motivation that's required, and tools and so on and so forth. You peel the onion a little bit more and you said, well, management might do that, except that there's a lack of education. Somehow, not only managers aren't trained well enough in what the right expectations are for this planning control system, but the workers don't understand what's really going on, the people that have to operate with it, so everyone reigns in confusion.
Okay, I have a return flight around.
It's clear that computing systems are having a very considerable impact on the way organizations function. Their effect on organizational structure is not so clear. Predictions about the effect of computers on organizational structure were first made over 3 decades ago. In 1953, 2 researchers, Levitt and Whistler, wrote a Harvard Business Review article entitled Management in the 80s. Now, in the 1980s, their prediction can be evaluated.
They made the prediction that because computers can be programmed, and because many middle managers execute decisions that are essentially programmed by top managers, why don't we just replace these middle managers with computers? And they predicted that instead of having a pyramid organizational structure, which was traditional, it would be replaced with sort of a hump with a ball sitting on top, and the hump would be all the workers, and the ball would be top management, and in between would be a computing system. Well, try to find an organization that looks like that. You can't. What happened there? Organizations are more complicated than people think they are. They're not static things like a piece of machinery. What happens when you introduce a computer into an organization is not very predictable. That's the first thing. The second thing is computers can't do things that people can do. Even as sophisticated as they are, computers can't make judgments in the same sense that human beings can. And judgment is very important in middle management, in top management, on the shop floor level. No matter where you go, judgment is critical. Computers' impact on organizational structure, like all these other things, is unclear. We don't know what the future is going to be. My feeling is that computing technology is not sufficiently powerful as a factor to seriously affect how organizations are structured. Size of the organization, the nature of the work it does, its geographic dispersion, the biases and positions of the key leaders. These are much more important factors.
Yeah.
Whatever the extent of their impact on organizational structure, computers clearly have a major impact on the people who make up organizations. Human beings, far more complex than the machines which serve them. CAD/CAM, computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing, for example, has changed the way engineers work. Computers are used to electronically translate a design idea into a blueprint for manufacture.
It's been interesting to see the CAD/CAM system and how it affects the engineers, the users of the product. We find that new engineers, meaning just out of college, tend to accept it readily because they're familiar with the capabilities of computers and have actually worked on computers during their college education. Conversely, we see the older engineers are a little bit hesitant at first because they're used to working on a drafting board and not so familiar with computers. In a sense, they're sort of worried that the computer might take away their job. But as soon as they can sit down on the terminal, and it's fantastic to watch one of these older engineers go through this acceptability of, wow, look what it can do for me. It's going to make my job so much quicker, so much easier. My finished product, meaning the output that I pass on to my customer, is so much more professional quality than he was able to put on a drafting board. It's a real good feeling to see this turnover.
As with any large-scale human endeavor, the introduction of computers into the workplace can sometimes give rise to ambivalent feelings.
The use of the computer in our quality assurance program here in the hospital has a definite effect on the physicians. The physicians can be classified into two groups. That first group is going to be intimidated somewhat by the computer. They're going to view it as an intrusion upon their ability to practice medicine freely, and will basically give them a big brother type of a feeling that we are governing and telling them how to practice medicine. The second group of doctors will see the computer for what it truly is, and that is a method of assuring true quality assurance for all the patients in the hospital, that we can then assure the community that they will get the care that they expect.
For some people, the impact of computers on their lives is much more than a matter of quality control. Larry Wass, a blind mathematician at Argonne National Laboratories, is a case in point.
What we have here is a machine which is different than the other terminals that you see, because most other terminals either print on paper, rather different kind of paper than this, which is specially treated and prints one character at a time, or they're a screen terminal where the screen is up in front of you. You look at the screen, you get a whole screen full of information. This printer prints one line at a time. It just spools out, and I get to read it in Braille, and therefore, of course, I can take it away afterwards, just like you could have printed a copy and fold it up because it's fan-fold paper. And it serves the two purposes, namely, it is a printer, so I can see what I've entered and what I've received, and it's also a terminal, so I can be connected to a big computer. So it allows me to keep in touch just the same way you would if you had a paper terminal or if you had a screen output terminal, except it comes out in Braille, one character for one.
For that.
As more and more organizations turn to computers, the line between users and non-users becomes increasingly blurred. For better or for worse, the nature of the workplace is being changed forever. In many environments, people accept computers as useful allies, capable of making their work better and more rewarding.
When we decided to get the computer system, my initial feeling about it was relief, primarily because as more clients retained us to represent them in this asbestos litigation, it became quite clear that it would be impossible to manage this volume of cases and the paperwork that comes in connection with the litigation. So I was quite pleased that we decided to go into this system, and as a result of that, I found in working with the computer that we're able to review a case file very, very quickly and obtain the information we need.
No waiting on checks down one, taking 10 out of 10 left and no checks, please.
Most of Ralph's employees are exposed in one way or another to computing technology. Scanning in the stores is a classic example of that. Generally speaking, the reaction of our employees at store level has been very, very positive. They find scanning to be easier. They find it to be faster, and they find that most customers prefer scanning to the old mechanical cash registers, which makes their job somewhat easier. In our warehouses, as another example, our warehousemen rely totally on the computer to provide them with information in terms of where product is located, when that product should be moved from one slot to another, where to put the product away. In the past, they had to guess at the answers to those kinds of questions. Their job, too, is somewhat easier. In our accounting department, many of our staff accountants use CRTs and have direct access to the system for not only retrieval and input of information, but also in order to pose what-if kinds of questions and to do some advanced type calculations, which in the past would have required several hours at a calculator.
Do you live in the city of Long Beach?
There is also a negative side to computers in the workplace. While they do help people perform routine tasks more quickly and accurately, computers can also measure speed and efficiency, providing a moment-by-moment record of performance. This isn't always appreciated by those whose work is being monitored. And some workers feel that eye strain and even problems during pregnancy may result from lengthy exposure to CRT screens. Although questions like these are being looked into, there is another issue of even greater concern: worker fears concerning job displacement.
The key issue in this whole computers and employment business is whether or not the application of computers has a net positive or a net negative impact on the number of job positions in the country. Usually when computers are applied, people don't get fired, okay? They leave through natural attrition. People retire, they go for other jobs, they decide they don't want to work there anymore or whatever, and they leave. The position is not filled again, okay? This is the way computers displace people. It's not, we brought in the computer, now everybody is fired, okay? That doesn't generally happen. It happens sometimes, but not often. The key question is, where do they go after they leave? Do they go out into the job place and look for a job and find out there aren't any jobs there? Now, this is the big issue.
The American workplace is going to go through a revolution. The first part of their revolution is going to have to be a realization on the part of employers that they're going to have to retrain their people to use the high technology that is now becoming available and is going to be a necessity for business to keep a competitive edge. I expect that's going to happen. I don't expect that jobs are going to be lost simply because there have to be people to support this high technology. It's just going to be different sorts of jobs.
Here at the Los Angeles Times, we guarantee that that person will be trained in an equally or better job than the one he had before if that job is going to be replaced. It's just a rule, that's a fact of life, that automation will replace jobs, and you have to keep that in mind. Even my job will be replaced at some time, and I have to plan for that. In the area of where a person's really going to get his job replaced, he normally ends up with a higher paying job in our company, almost always. So we get very good cooperation. In fact, we have people that come to us and ask us to replace their job for them. In automation, we always take the approach that we try to do what the computer does best and do what the person does best. So often we enhance a person's job rather than replacing it. So we take the tedious work away and leave the creative part, which also makes that job more fun.
The impact of the computer on the world of work can be illustrated by examining the latest advance in automation, robotics. To some, robots are nothing more than amusing toys, but for many others, they are a serious business.
Basically, a robot is a machine, but it's a machine that has certain characteristics. The Robotics Institute of America, which is a professional society for people working in robotics, have identified 3 characteristics of an industrial robot. One is that it have an arm or arms. 2, that it have what we call an end effector, or a hand or a gripper, some kind, that does the work. And 3rd is that it have some kind of controller that would make the arm and the gripper do something.
Some people consider me the grandfather of robotics, and as a matter of fact, I am the grandfather. In fact, I'm the father of robotics in a very literal sense. I was the first one ever to use that word in the March 1942 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. I said in the course of the stories, on page 100 of that magazine, these are the 3 laws of robotics. 1, a robot may not harm a human being, or through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2, a robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where that would conflict with rule number 1. And 3, a robot must protect its own existence, except where that would conflict with rules 1 and 2.
In the years that have passed since Isaac Asimov formulated his 3 laws, automated machines have progressed from imagination to reality, from the idea stage to the laboratory, and from the laboratory to the factory. General Motors plans to install 14,000 robots by the early 1990s, replacing a 5% absentee rate with 24-hour-a-day so-called steel-collar workers.
The primary purpose of our robots here at General Motors is welding robots. We do a lot of spot welding throughout the body shop, and then now we're trying to branch out a little further by welding several frames of, let's say here in the hatch glass area and so forth. We're able now to produce a product that we can really rely on as far as being the same throughout the entire day and so forth, where a worker, on the other hand, would maybe get tired doing the same job and so forth and possibly miss this or miss that, not on purpose, but accidentally. And it's really promoted a lot more quality in the plant.
Robotics should be able to replace people very rapidly in what I call hostile environments. A hostile environment does not just mean a battlefield. A hostile environment also means a messy, dirty, polluted factory place. It also means underground in mines. A robot, hopefully, will be able to replace people in mines because robots don't get the black lung disease. I also see robots replacing us in very tedious, mundane jobs. From my point of view, one of those is housekeeping. From my point of view, in a more global respect, it has to do with a lot of clerical administrative functions, which we do very poorly. People hate to remember things. People can't remember things. Robots don't have anything else to do but to remember.
The disadvantage when we first got into robots was the fact that people were really afraid of losing their job. They felt that, well, hey, eventually I won't have anything to do because the robot's going to be doing my job. But the longer that we've had them, well, we've had them for almost 2 years now here, people have grown to accept them and really appreciate what they do. We have right now a lot of training going on as far as robotics, automated equipment, and this plays an important part here because it really has, it doesn't do any good to have all this new automated equipment if nobody knows how to work on it. So it's very important for people that like right now, don't have a skilled trade or would like to have one. We're trying to go out of our way to really give them an education on really how to work on them, how to operate them, and so forth. And I think it'll eventually come to the point where there won't be any unskilled labor as far as manufacturing and so forth.
In the future, I would expect robots to go from the manufacturing environment where they're doing welding and general purpose assembly, loading machine tools, and all the activities that go on in a factory. They will progress from there into the construction site, probably first in shipbuilding, but then into general types of construction. Probably around the turn of the century, we'll see the automatic factory, where you have virtually totally unmanned factory operations where computers and computer-controlled machines and robots essentially do all of the operations from the basic casting and forging through the machining and assembly and inspection and packaging for shipment. Far into the next century, we can expect to see robots mining the seabeds, deep tunneling, and, of course, space exploration, and perhaps working in nuclear installations and handling toxic chemicals and materials like that.
The hope is that sophisticated robots will eventually take over all the unpleasant, monotonous, and dangerous occupations, freeing people for the work they do best.
There would be jobs that would be more creative. There would be jobs that represent scientific research, work in the arts, work in literature, hobbies, show business, all kinds of things in which you can fulfill your own abilities in the way you would like to do it.
I was just looking through this replica of the original Gutenberg Bible. You know, it was the first book ever printed in Western civilization. We've come a long way these past 400 years. Much of what used to be just printed now gets converted into electronic form and stored so it can be accessed quickly and easily. Information can be manipulated and exchanged at the flick of a switch, which is great, especially if you're doing research or trying to keep track of your organization's records. But you know, something tells me there's always going to be a place for books. Somehow I just can't imagine curling up in bed on a cold winter's night with a cup of hot chocolate and a good computer.
Funding for this program was provided by the Annenberg CPB project.
WVIZ TV 25, Cleveland.
AM weather is made possible by grants from the Federal Aviation Administration, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, AOPA Air Safety Foundation, Phillips Petroleum Company, and the National Business Aircraft Association. Additional production grants have been provided by Hilton Hotels Corporation and the United States Aircraft Insurance Group.
It's Wednesday, March 6, 1985. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to AM Weather. I'm Carl Weiss.
And I'm Wayne Winston. Well, if you live in a part of the country that's had enough wintry weather this week, coming up in just a couple of minutes, we'll have a general outlook of the weather for next week. But Carl, that stormy weather did move out of the eastern part of the country. The one thing that didn't move out, though, is rather strong winds.
Strong winds still do persist over much of the northeastern part of the nation. From the Great Lakes into the northeast on Tuesday, wind gusted to 45 miles per hour throughout much of the region. Stronger wind gusts, however, Those happened at Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and at Syracuse, New York, where the winds gusted to more than 60 miles per hour. Now, while some light snow is falling over the Northeast and parts of the Great Lakes states this morning, the heaviest snow has indeed come to an end. During the past 24 hours, as much as 16 inches of new snow blankets the higher elevations of the Adirondacks and the Green Mountains. Yesterday, Portland, Maine picked up 10 inches of snow, and that's almost 3/4 of their normal monthly total for March. Cold air is pouring southward now behind that big storm system center, but yesterday warm air under west and southwesterly winds moved up the eastern seaboard. Temperatures in the 60s and 70s as far north as New York City. In fact, they set a record high temperature yesterday for the date with 66. More record highs, 87 both at Jacksonville and Daytona Beach in northeastern Florida. Moving into the plain states, the weather certainly has quieted down from earlier this week. The only problem we could find, if you could call it a problem, some low clouds and drizzle for the southern tip of Texas. Now moving out into the western part of the nation, they're having a winter storm of their own. Travelers advisories and winter storm warnings cover most of the higher elevations of northern California. Up to 2 feet of snow is possible overnight in the higher elevations of the Sierras. Light snow and travelers advisories into eastern Idaho with rain and rain showers back along most of the west coast. Temperatures around the nation as of 5 o'clock this morning range from a low of -13, that found at Hibbing in northern Minnesota, while the high of 72, and that's found where else? Key West, Florida. That's the way things check out across the nation early on this Wednesday morning. And Wayne, from our satellite view, I guess we'll be able to say goodbye to the storm in the east and hello to the storm moving into California.
Right, that eastern storm moved out so quickly when we start up our motion. You really don't see much evidence left of it. Already early yesterday morning when the motion starts, we had some low clouds around the lakes where we had the persistent snow showers and over the northeastern part of the country, but the storm not looking nearly as impressive as it did the day before. We'll go through that motion and you'll see plenty of fair skies though from the southern plains down across the southeastern part of the country where they had some quite warm temperatures. Now, as we go through the sequence of pictures a second time, though, areas of cloudiness, bands of clouds continue to move inland from our western storm, spreading rain and snow as they do so. We do have a close-up view of that part of the country taken earlier this morning at 1 a.m. Pacific time. This is an enhanced picture. What we do is see several clusters of clouds, if you will, areas of cloudiness associated with each disturbance here, one over southeastern Idaho, western Montana, some snow falling out of that. Another area of clouds and precipitation really just beginning to clear the Sierra Nevada mountains and moving out across Nevada. Then as you look off the coast, here is another disturbance which is rotating around in the circulation. Now that's going to be moving onto the California coast later this morning, accompanied by some fairly strong showers along the coast, even perhaps a thunder shower or two with snow in the higher elevations. Over to our latest satellite picture. This is the 5:30 enhanced picture. We do see generally fair skies for the most part over the south and much of the east. If you look carefully, you can see some lower and mid-level clouds here through the Ohio Valley and around the lakes, with the high clouds through the plains showing up quite well as they extend into the southwestern part of the country, but no precipitation falling out of those. Over to the radar map, and you will see that the precipitation around the country is fairly sparse and widely scattered, most of it being out in the western part of the country where we have some scattered showers along the California coast. Of course, the higher elevations, this is snow with the snow level around 3,000 to 4,000 feet. Now, as you go eastward, radar isn't picking up any precipitation as we cross the mountains, head across the plains and through the middle west. But here in the eastern part of the country, some isolated snow showers show up around the lakes in the Ohio Valley into the New England area, but tops only about 7,000 feet. Carl?
As we look at the high temperature forecast for this Wednesday, we see that the only really cool weather we can find, sub-freezing readings, those will be found over parts of the upper Midwest and the eastern lakes, as well as most of the interior Northeast. Readings there in the 20s and teens for northern Maine. 30s and 40s for most of the northern Rockies and the Northwest. Temperatures are warming up into the 60s and 70s from the lower Colorado Valley into the southern plain states, while Florida once again will have beautiful weather, readings there mainly in the 70s and the 80s. Now the overnight lows will show sub-freezing temperatures as far south as the higher elevations of northern Arizona, and then as warm air starts to move northward through the upper Mississippi Valley, the freezing mark will move northward into Iowa. We'll have 20s and teens for much of the Northeast. In fact, teens as far south as the mountains of western Maryland, and single numbers from northern Maine back into the extreme northern plain states. Southern Florida, once again, that'll be the mild spot with lows in the 70s. Now our first forecast map will be for this Wednesday evening, and it will show a high-pressure system located just north of Buffalo, and that means fair, dry weather for most of the eastern one-half of the U.S. A low-pressure trough moving out into the high plains with some clouds, but not much in the way of any rain or snow. Snow will be falling, however, from the plateau westward into the Sierras, where there'll be a good chance of that snow, and rain showers for most of the west coast. Then on Thursday morning, not much change over the western part of the nation. A couple of low-pressure systems out there. Best chance of snow over the mountains of northern and eastern California. Good chance of rain showers along the California coast. That low-pressure trough will turn into a frontal system, but still not much in the way of any rain or snow for the plain states, and a double-barrel high-pressure system will be racing through much of the Northeast. And then finally, on Friday morning, a storm system will be taking shape over the upper Mississippi Valley. Southwesterly winds with warmer and more moist air will cause showers to break out from eastern Oklahoma across the southern lakes and into the Northeast. Low-pressure system moving into the central high plains will spread a good chance of snow for the Colorado and the Wyoming Rockies, and a new cold front moving toward the west coast will spread snow into the coastal ranges of Washington and Oregon, with rain farther to the south. Wayne?
Next this morning from the forecasters of the National Weather Service, we have the general weather outlook for Monday through Friday of next week. And when you look at that temperature forecast, looks like spring is trying to gain a foothold, with most of the country expected to have warmer than normal temperatures for this time of the year. In fact, those readings should average much above normal here from the mid-Atlantic region into the Northeast, about normal for the northern plateau and the Northwest. Now, looking at that precipitation forecast through next Monday through Friday, we see that the two areas where it might be wetter than normal will be out in the Pacific Northwest, the upper Midwest, and the Great Lakes, but generally rather dry weather expected for the Southeast, much of the plains, and the Southwest. Carl?
Pilots, please don't forget to get a pre-flight briefing before you fly. Just remember that all of our weather information here at AM Weather should be used just for planning purposes. Around the nation, early on this Wednesday morning, we do have some MVFR ceilings and visibilities found from the Northeast back through the eastern lakes and down through the Appalachians. This is due mostly to low clouds and some snow squalls. Here's the low clouds and drizzle over southern Texas, and snow moving into the northern Rockies and parts of the plateau, with rain showers back along most of the west coast, as well as some low clouds. Two areas of rime icing to show you this morning. From the eastern lakes through the mountains of the Northeast, we expect some occasional moderate rime icing up to around 9,000 feet. And across most of the Northwest, there will be some more occasional icing from 3,000 up to around 15,000 feet. Turbulence, we'll find that in opposite corners of the nation. Strong north and northwest winds across the Northeast, bringing moderate turbulence there to 8,000 feet. And with the low-pressure system in the west, moderate turbulence over the mountains of southern and central California as high as 18,000 feet. Then for the evening hours, MVFR weather with some lingering low clouds over northern Maine, and low cloudiness once again for the southern part of Texas, and once again for California and the Cascades of Oregon, low clouds, rain, and snow in the higher elevations. Looking at turbulence for the evening hours, now southerly winds through the Mississippi Valley, bringing low-level turbulence, moderate up to 8,000 feet, and not much change for the western part of the nation with the storm out there, moderate bumps as high as 18,000 feet. Coming up next, we have winds aloft, and Wayne starts them at 2,000 feet above ground level.
Wind circulation at this altitude dominated by two features: the low pressure in the west, the high pressure over the central and eastern part of the country, and between the two systems you have increasingly strong southerly winds. 25 knots or a bit stronger from northeastern Oklahoma northward. At 10,000 feet, generally a trough along the western part of the country with a ridge through the Midwest and the east. The shaded areas at 10,000 feet indicating wind speeds between 25 and 50 knots. At 18,000 feet, it's a strong band of winds from the southwest to the middle west and to the mid-Atlantic region. In this area, those speeds between 50 and 100 knots. And at 34,000 feet, our dark shaded areas from the southwest, in the east and along the Gulf Coast, indicate wind speeds between 100 and 150 knots. It's time for Weather Watch. Here again is Carl.
And those strong northwest winds are stirring up coastal waters along the Atlantic seaboard. There are small craft advisories posted along the east coast from Eastport, Maine, southward to Savannah, Georgia. These advisories include all major harbors, bays, and sounds. Northern waters will have northwest winds 15 to 30 knots with higher gusts. Farther south, the winds will be more northerly with seas as high as 9 feet. Down along the Gulf Coast, more small craft advisories extend from the mouth of the Mississippi over to Port O'Connor, Texas. Winds will be out of the east and northeast up to 20 knots and waves 4 to 6 feet. Now for the plains. Most of Kansas, western Oklahoma, and the Texas Panhandle all have lake wind advisories posted. The advisories for Texas will last through Thursday. Southerly winds will gust to 30 miles per hour. Moving westward, travelers' advisories have been issued for southeastern Idaho for Wednesday. These advisories are for snow. The northern and southern Sierras, Tahoe Basin, and mountains of northeastern California all have winter storm warnings in effect for Wednesday. Snow levels across the northern Sierras will drop to as low as 1,500 feet. Travelers' advisories for snow cover most of northern and northwestern California for Wednesday. This includes the Mount Shasta-Siskiyou area and the northern end of the Sacramento Valley. Coastal waters from Cape Flattery, Washington, southward to Point Conception, California have small craft advisories posted. Winds won't be the problem, but northwest ocean swells as high as 15 feet will be. The California outer coastal waters from Point Conception down to San Clemente Island also have small craft advisories in effect. These are for both southwest winds 15 to 25 knots and waves up to 18 feet. Well, that's it for AM weather on this Wednesday morning. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us, and join us again right here on Thursday.
AM weather is made possible by grants from the Federal Aviation Administration, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, AOPA Air Safety Foundation, Phillips Petroleum Company, and the National Business Aircraft Association. Additional production grants have been provided by Hilton Hotels Corporation and the United States Aircraft Insurance Group.